Hello everyone, this is the second video of chapter 11 lecture on work, money, and leisure. And in this video, we're going to start to talk about 3 ways to look at the relationship between work and leisure and compare them. These are pro-leisure, pro-work, and neutral perspective. And we're going to begin with pro-leisure perspective. So what that means is basically, from this perspective, leisure is the most important thing. It's a paramount human condition. It's where human beings should be, technically speaking. And its relationship to work is helping us overcome the inhumane consequences of work. So from this perspective, work is not good. It's exhausting. It's inhumane. That's not what we are. It's forcing on us. It's not our nature in a way. That sounds pretty good, right? That's pretty, okay, you may ask, because we're living in such a work-dominated society, you may ask, hey, Shin, that sounds so fantastic, but who believes in that really? Because I want to go to that place. Now, I'll give you a good answer. The United Nations believe in that to an extent. Well, in 1948, they collectively, over 100 countries, they sign on something called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's a series of over hundreds of articles about what should be basic human rights. And there are 2 of them that address actually this pro-leisure perspective, and I'm sharing one. Article 24. Everyone has the right to rest and leisure right there, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. There you go. Canada agreed to it. US agreed to it too. Then they brought it back to the country. They decided not to rectify, just put it into their, legal system and everything. They did. And that's why they don't have, US doesn't still have paid leave. No, they don't. 0. It's mandatory 0. That's not the case for us, Canada, right? We learned that already. So from pro-leisure perspective, work is not good, right? And it's in a worst scenario case, how work looks like is this, workaholism, right? It's an addiction to work. Now, I want you to clarify, because this word workaholic, being a workaholic, workaholism has been used in a society very casually, okay? You may consider yourself, oh, I'm a workaholic a little bit. Or maybe you call, one of your parents, like, my mom, she's a little workaholic, right? But really, is the question, really? Because in workaholism, work becomes the single most important activity in that person's life. Okay, it dominates thinking. What we're worried about, we're thinking, feelings. We feel happy when the work goes well, when we feel crappy, when it doesn't go as well, and behavior, and how we're spending time. And what's important is that this next one, working hard is not the same thing as workaholism, okay? No, and working long hours for that matter is not the same. Because, think about it, especially with the COVID-19, unfortunately, there's a lot of layoff going on, right? So the people who have jobs, they're going to try hard to keep their job, right? Work really hard, put the ideas in it, put efforts into it. Maybe you will take up some extra work and extra hours to keep, to be necessary and really essential to that company or whatever that might be. That's not workaholic. That is not. When you cannot get away from it, and like this picture, you cannot get away from work because you just can't, you have this uncontrollable urge to work, keep working. Now that's workaholism. Of course, working hard too much, working long too much could lead to workaholism eventually, but that's not the same thing. So workaholism itself is not necessarily recognized, diagnosable addiction per se, but there are some criteria which could be useful for us with which we can reflect upon ourselves. People have called me workaholic, right? Shouldn't you just you just little workaholic? You're, for the God's sake, you're a leisure scholar. Take it easy. I don't think I'm workaholic, to be honest, because I know this too. But let's think about this list first. First, do you think of how you can free up more time so that you can work more? It's like, if I eat my breakfast in a commuting drive, I can save up extra 20 minutes of working a little more or doing some paper. Now that will be a bit of risky point. Second, do you spend much more time working than initially intended? You think, today it's 8 to 5, and eventually you're working somehow from 8 to 10 p.m. Actually, this happens a lot to teachers. 3, work to reduce the feelings of guilt, anxiety, helplessness, and depression. In other words, you don't work, you feel these things, guilty. Why, right? Why do you have to feel guilty when you're not working outside of your working hours? You're not working because you're not in the job, on the job. But if you have workaholism, addiction to it, work, you feel that way. 4th, have you been told by other people to cut down on work? What about you in the study? Did anybody tell, hey, you're working too hard, you're studying too hard, you gotta just chill out a little bit? Maybe your parents told you, like, you're just pushing too much, maybe. Did anybody? 5th, you become so stressed out if you are prohibited from working. It's like you're scared to take a vacation. Sometimes you're told to, like, you gotta take a vacation because vacation time is accumulating, and you take because you have to, and you're miserable when you're on a vacation. Most of you, like, what are you talking about? Like, I love vacation, like, give me more vacation, right? For some people, this is the case. 6, you work so much that it has negatively influenced your health. We're going to talk about that in a bit. But stress, psychological, mental, physical, social, maybe. 7th, deprioritize hobbies, leisure activities, or exercise for your work. It happens, right? It happens to me during semester. I don't work out as much, but almost non-existent. Leisure becomes almost non-existent. Well, that's a problem, right? Really. How many of these things apply to you? If it applies a lot, you may want to think about it. You may want to talk about it to somebody, right? Or somebody may apply, may check off a lot of these. You may want to talk to that person. Now, the negative effects of workaholism on our health and also, more importantly, happiness. That's what we're talking about here. Chapter talked about, workaholism usually goes with the too little sleep, too much stress, right? And that leads to elevated blood pressure, headaches, chest pain. Well, that does not sound good. Digestive difficulties, that could happen. Fatigue, anxiety, and irritability. So psychological, physiological, not to mention social, right? A lot of people with the workaholism would have strained relationships with their family, with their friends, if they still have friends, right? Another way that this negative thing called work, from leisure perspective, work is not a good thing. But if you kind of do too much work, there's a negative influence of that on our leisure. That's called play aversion. Overcommitment to recreation, leisure activities, to the point where leisure takes on the characteristics of work. Your leisure starts to look like work. There are people like that. Maybe some of you or your friends. For those people, no free time is left for spontaneity. It's not like, hey, I got like afternoon open. Can we just go bar and just grab a beer? Of course, you probably shouldn't be doing that right now with the COVID. But what I'm talking about. Hey, I have afternoon, open. Do you want to work out? Do you want to just maybe do some snowshoeing? Maybe it's cold, or something. Maybe you want to cook out, right? But no, you have to meticulously plan everything. No, everything my afternoon is full. I got to do 1 hour for workout, 1 hour for cooking, 1 hour for watching TV. And the TV is I'm watching these things. And I'm going to do, everything is scheduled out, even for your leisure. Where did the spontaneity go? Where is the freedom anymore, right? And placing high value on always being busy in leisure. How many of your friends on a social media or when you talk to them or whatever that might be, they're like, oh, I'm so busy. It's not just, they're busy with the schoolwork and maybe part-time job. They're like, I gotta hang out with that person and just doing this, that, Even hearing their stories, their life makes you feel, heart is pounding so much, like it's stressful, right? It makes you feel a little anxious. Like, why do you have to do so many things? Can we just have 2 hours not doing anything, but also enjoying that possibility of you can do anything? Playing hard. We have this, sometimes slogan, the saying goes like, expression goes like, work hard, play hard. Why? Right? Work hard, maybe. You can play hard or you can play easy. You can play chill. You can play in a relaxed manner, right? Why not? Overscheduling activity. You're using almost Google Calendar or anything, calendar, those app and everything to schedule your leisure. Not just school, but leisure too. How many of us do we do that? Use the Google Calendar for our leisure. Actually, I have badminton sessions in my Google thing, but it's just because of the partner. We have to work as a pair or group sometimes. So, and finally, feeling anxious when we have nothing to schedule. It's a good thing. It could be a good thing. It's a luxury. You don't have to, hit up somebody else, your friend, and just have to have a conversation. No, you can read the book that you wanted to, or you can just not do anything. When I talk about play aversion, always makes me think about, TV reference, Friends and Monica. If you haven't watched Friends, again, I shouldn't recommend. Sorry, it's a long season. But anyway, Monica is the type of person who is always overstructured, very disciplined, very, very organized, very extremely organized. Okay. And in this scene, she was having some party, and clearly nobody's having a party because everything is neatly organized, and she will be stressed out if anything doesn't go along with her plan. And she's saying here, she's doing some activity with the pens and piece of paper, and on the top left, she's saying, listen, I don't mean to be a pain about this, but she's definitely a pain. But I've noticed some of you are just placing a cap on a pen, like this. You want to push the caps until you hear them click. And that's what she does. And of course, this is a player version. Like, it's like almost boss talking to you. You don't want to do that. You don't want to have that during your leisure, right? It's a player version, a classic example of that. Now, from the perspective of leisure, there are some good news. Some people in the industry that are, outside of university, those companies and organizations, they started to realize the value of leisure and play. One of those examples is this: workplace play. The use of play at a workplace, right, to enhance motivation, productivity, satisfaction of workers. You may have heard, some Google, those Silicon Valley companies, Facebook. They have this, bouncy yoga bowl. There's a ping pong table. Maybe they have like a Friday drinking socials, video game plays. Actually people can, play video games during, in a workplace. They can nap. They can take a nap at a workplace. Fantastic, right? Those things. Now this Patelzik, I think, 2018, their colleagues, they reviewed dozens of papers about this workplace play. And they identified 3 major outcomes, 3 layers, 3 levels. First, it is for individual employees, right? In an organization with the workplace play, implemented, employees tends to have less stress, less burnout, that's good, higher satisfaction with their job, higher perceived competence in their job, higher creativity, that's good. More involvement, taking up some, project and responsibility, yet lower performance. And that's an interesting stuff, right? That's a little stinky part. Now, in terms of team and relational level, so as a group, right? There's more trust, it leads to more trust, more bonding, more solidarity as a team, right? Less boundary between hierarchical roles, like manager versus subordinates, right? There's a less boundary, more democratic, if you will. That's a good thing. Finally, organizational level outcome, friendly atmosphere, flexible organizational decision making, which is very good because it's adaptable, right? In an uncertain situation like today, organizational creativity. There is a lot of benefits at the different levels, except for the lower performance at the individual level. Another way that we can, bring leisure into work in different non-leisure domain is this gamification. Gamification is basically the application of game-oriented, game-like thinking to various non-game situations. And one of the classic examples is actually education. You may have taken courses at a university where this gamification was applied, okay? One of the examples is, for example, you watch the lecture, you do assignments, quizzes, and you get points, right? And besides the grade, and maybe that's top 10 is shared and there's a friendly, competition among students, maybe that kind of thing. And that's a visible social status at the top in the middle I'm talking about. Freedom of choice, like within some, quiz, exam, assignments, there's choice. Sometimes I give a little bit of choice in exam, right? Out of 12 historical time, choose 3, 4, 5, whatever that might be, that kind of things. And a multiple and freedom of failure, where you're allowed to do some multiple tries and multiple attempts. And that's part of gamification as well. Because if you think about it, video game kind of thing, for example, you fail, but you keep trying, and eventually you beat that monster, whatever that may be, or you beat that, you clear that quest or whatever that is, right? The same thing. Another example is using, some of the technology such as Kahoot, which is very, it's at this point it's pretty classic and old, but it's that too. So now I'm gonna stop talking about pro leisure, and I will see you in the next video.